Hey everybody, Hunter Fisher, Trapper, Trader, Guide, Scout, and Interpreter, and Country Cook Steve Hall here in Nashville, Tennessee, along with pretty Miss Sheila behind the camera. Hi, Shishi.
Hi.
I got to do a recipe today here on Cooking with Shotgun Red for a gentleman that asked about a pickled egg recipe. And I said, well, I know a quick and easy pickled egg and beet recipe. And he said, well, I love beets. Go ahead and do that. So this is for you. Now let me address the non-beet eating people out there, because I love pickled beets. And I like regular beets too. But people have walked up to a buffet in the past and got some beets and they go, I've even heard comments like, it tastes like dirt or garden, or they're too earthy, I don't like them. But you were eating regular beets, not pickled beets, and there's a difference. Pickled beets got vinegar and sugar and spices. We were up at a casino in northern Minnesota. My cousin Dave was there along with Jean, his wife, and she said, I just don't like beets. I said, just taste their pickled beets, because they're the best. And they are. She tried one bite and went and got a plate full of them. She said, these are just delicious, and I don't even like beets. I said, that's because they're pickled. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn non-pickled beets into pickled beets with some vinegar and some sugar and some spices, and we're going to pour it over the top of our eggs, and let's get a close look and we'll show you what we're talking about. You'll need a quart jar, about 3/4 full, of hard-boiled eggs, right up to about the shoulder here, and we'll get to these in a second. And how I did these was I just put like a dozen eggs in here, because I like to have a few for breakfast. I put a dozen eggs in the pan, covered them with cold water, turned it on high, and then I let it come to a boil and boil for 1 minute, covered it, took it off the heat, and covered it for 15 minutes. Then I took the eggs out and put them in a bowl, just like this one right here, full of ice water with water and a bunch of ice cubes, and put them in there for 15 minutes, and they just peel real nice, and that's really, really easy. Now for our brine, we're going to take a 15-ounce can of beets. That's just regular beets sliced. Now you can use the little round ones too, but I'm using these. I already got the burner on here, so it might sizzle. No? And I'm going to keep the beets in the can for just a little bit, because I want to kind of slice them up, because we only have a little bit of room in that jar, and I want to kind of get some pieces here and there. Now in our beet juice that we have in here, we're going to put in a 1/2 cup of sugar, a 1/2 cup of vinegar, white vinegar, and a 1/2 cup of water, because this is going to give us the fluid that we need to fill that jar. Then we're also going to take a little pickling spice and sprinkle in here. Just a little bit, maybe about a 1/2 teaspoon. That's plenty. I probably get more questions about what pickling spice do you use? I have no idea. Let me read the back of it here for you. It says here, it's got all kinds of stuff in there. It's got cinnamon and ginger and bay leaves and caraway seed and allspice and black pepper and coriander and cloves. There's all kinds of goodies in here. Just go to the store and pick up a little metal can of pickling spice, and that's what I use on all the pickling recipes, whether you're doing our pickled fish, our pickled shrimp, or this here, which I just got about a 1/2 teaspoon in there. Just buy regular pickling spice, and you don't have to go buy all the other spices, because it's all made for you in the can. And I hope that answers that question. All right, now remember, in this pot we put the juice only from this 15-ounce can of beets, and we transferred our beets onto this plate. And the reason I did that, here's what they normally look like, one little disc, and I cut each one of them into kind of halves or even thirds, just because I want them to go down around those eggs when I put them in the jar. And the reason I started all this concoction early is because while the camera was off, I've been stirring to kind of put the flavor in from our pickling spice, and mostly to dissolve the sugar without smashing these beets. So now I'm going to add the beets in there now that I got my sugar completely dissolved. And you might not use all of this in the jar. It might not all fit, but you just want to make sure that you have enough of this to fill that jar. Oh man, I wish you could smell this, because it smells absolutely fantastic. Do a little house cleaning here while that's kind of coming to a simmer. Now these are nice because you don't have to water bath this jar. When we're done, we're not going to do anything but pour the juice in here fairly hot. We're going to let it cool down just a little bit, and then we're going to pour it in here while it's still fairly hot. And then you just screw the lid on it good and tight, put it in the refrigerator, let it get cold, and after about 4 hours, you can already start to eat the pickled eggs. And while this is coming to a boil, let me tell you, the reason I like the beet, and you can do pickled eggs that are just white, but when I traveled up and down the road in Minnesota for quite a few years, every nightclub I went in had a jar of pickled eggs behind the bartender, you know, and I'd say, well, give me a pickled egg, and they were always red, but they used food dye and, you know, chemicals or stuff to dye the eggs red. And why they were red, I have no idea, but that's all I'm used to. And by the way, once you put this juice in here and let it set, especially overnight, it's almost like a smoke ring when you're smoking a ham or something. When you cut that egg open, you'll see how it's soaked in. Really looks pretty. It looks beautiful on salads and all kinds of stuff. But just eating them straight up during a football game, that kind of thing is also great. So, my Uncle Bob was the one that told me about these turning regular store-bought beets into quick little pickled beets to make them sweet with that little bite. And one other thing too, the seasoning that I put in there, remember I was talking about that pickling spice. If you don't have this, you can still make this recipe today there at home. Just put in about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, because everybody's got cinnamon up in the shelf somewhere, and that's good enough. But I like the full pickling spice flavor because the cloves and all that stuff that are in there. And this is getting really close. And even though I haven't really simmered this juice into these pickles, these beets, it's going to sit in the refrigerator in that sugary, vinegary, did I say that right, Sheila? Vinegary? In that vinegary substance, and especially with that sugar, and it's going to turn them into that beets that you love once you try it. Now the only thing I see missing here, and I'm going to leave it out just for this recipe, is onions. I'd like to slice up some onions, a couple slices, and sprinkle some of them in the jar too. But I'm just going to do this straight up pickled egg and beet recipe. And that's close enough for me. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this, I'm going to turn this off. In fact, I'm going to take this off the burner so that it cools down. Let me move this out of frame. Let this start to cool down just a little bit. And I'm going to take my eggs and I'm going to pour them in this bowl. Because I wanted to know how many it took. Because some small or medium or large eggs, whatever you had, would take more or less. So I just did enough to make sure I could get up to that collar. Now I'm dumping them in here. That way I can just add a couple of these and take a little bit of beets, because some recipes they just pour everything on top and it doesn't get down in there amongst the rest of the goodies. I'm not sure if we're directly in frame here, but, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I've got my handy dandy little pourer thing, duh. So, and then I'm going to put a couple more eggs in there and some more beets. And see, when they're cut up in halves and in quarters or whatever, they fall down around them eggs nice. Man, this stuff smells so good. Unbelievable. See if I can get them in there. I'm kind of running out of space, but we'll see. I've got 3 eggs left. I'll put a little more pickled beets in here. And see if we can get our last couple 3 eggs in there or not. I don't know. Looks like I'm going to have to leave a couple of them out of there because I want to put more of that stuff. So there we go. That's good enough. And like I said, I just took that off the burner. I don't know why I insist on not using that funnel. But I'm going to use it here in a second because I'm going to pour the juice in there. Wow, when it was on the plate, you wouldn't think that 15 ounces of beets would go in there. But I am picking up the last couple little pieces out of the pan. That's every one of them. Wow. That recipe works out just about perfect. Now, of course, we have space in between everything. Now, let me see if I can pour this without making a mess. I don't know if this pan is going to pour or not, but let me see if I can get lucky. There we go. And yes, pour it in while it's hot. I'm going to bring it right to the top of this jar, right there. And look, all I got is just a little bit of juice left in there. And this is for the gentleman that said, send me a pickled egg recipe. Well, now you got it. And snug this up pretty good and snug. And you'll hear that little popper seal, just like if you were doing anything else. But you don't have to water bath it. You don't have to do anything with it. Just take that and put it in the refrigerator and chill it down. And these will turn out fantastic. We even ended up with a couple of eggs left over for lunch. Throw a little salt and pepper on there and we're good to go. Remember, we took a 15-ounce can of just regular sliced beets out of the store, poured the juice in our pan, put in a half, that's easy to remember, all halves. Half a cup of sugar, half a cup of vinegar, half a cup of water. Put it in there about a half a teaspoon. Well, there's a half there too. About a half a teaspoon of pickling spice sprinkled in there. Bring it to a boil. Chop up your beets and pour them in. That way they don't dissolve or you break them all up when you're boiling it. And pull it off the heat, let it cool down just a little bit. And I layer it so I get all that stuff in there. You can add some onions if you want, all the above. And we, like I said, we even had a couple eggs left over for lunch. So I would say you won't need over 10 eggs, maybe only 8 or 9. And, you know, then you could get even more juice in there. But I'm going to put this in the refrigerator. Boy, it's fairly warm yet, but I'm going to put it in the fridge. Chill it down for 4 hours, and it should be ready to already snack. It's good for about 2 weeks in the refrigerator if you're going to ask me that next question, because anything that's pickled like that, it's got them goodies in there, don't last very long in the refrigerator, so you're safe at 2 weeks. Is this the best little pickled egg and beet recipe that I made for the gentleman that asked about it that you'll ever eat? If it ain't, it ought to be. This is Steve Hall in Nashville, Tennessee, saying there's our subscribe button right there across the bottom of the screen. Hope you click on that. Hope you subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you next time. Bye, Sheila. Thanks for your help.
Bye.
All right. We'll see you next time right here on Cooking with Shotgun Red. Bye-bye.